Imagine this. You're sitting on a plane, cruising at 10 kilometers up in the sky, about the height where jumbo jets chill and where clouds look like cotton candy carpets. Suddenly, the engines fail, the fuselage tears apart, and you're thrown out into the open air. No parachute, no superhero cape, just you, gravity, and the longest uh-oh moment of your life. Now, physics says this is basically a death sentence. At that height, you'd hit terminal velocity, around 200 kilometers per hour, before you even have time to scream more than a few curse words. That's faster than most race cars, except you're the one turning into the hood ornament. But here's the twist. Some people have actually survived falls from this altitude. Yeah, real humans, not video game characters with cheat codes. They fell through the sky, smashed into Earth, and somehow lived to tell the story. And if you're wondering, no, I'm not making this up. We're talking official records, witnesses, and in one case, a Guinness World Record for highest fall survived without a parachute, which, by the way, is a category that really shouldn't exist. Like, who's competing for that? Anyway, I'm just a dumb rabbit with oversized glasses, but I had to know, how is this even possible? Is it pure luck, freaky physics, or just nature trolling us again? Today, we're diving nose first into the wild science and unbelievable true stories of humans who fell from the sky and didn't become pancakes. Alright, before we dive into the survival stories, let's talk science. Because if you want to know how someone can survive falling from 10 kilometers up, you first need to know what's trying to kill you on the way down. Spoiler alert, it's physics. When you jump or get violently ejected from a plane, you don't keep accelerating forever like some cartoon anvil. Instead, you hit something called terminal velocity. That's the maximum speed your fluffy body can reach while falling through air, because gravity is pulling you down, but air resistance is pushing back up. For a human in a spread eagle position, terminal velocity is about 200 kilometers per hour. If you tuck in like a skydiver going for style points, you can reach over 300. Either way, that's highway speed death incoming. Imagine being slapped by the ground harder than a Lego brick hidden in carpet. Now here's the kicker. Water isn't your friend either. At those speeds, hitting water is basically like hitting concrete. Unless you land perfectly and the water has enough depth to slow you down, your bones are gonna be like, we're out of here. So no, diving into the ocean from 10 kilometers won't save you. Sorry, movie fans. What about the atmosphere? Well, from 10 kilometers up, there's still plenty of air to slow you down a little. You're not in outer space, you're in the troposphere, the layer where weather happens and where bunnies like me get struck by lightning in cartoons. But even with air resistance, you're still moving fast enough that survival odds are basically zero. And the real nightmare? The impact forces are monstrous. A normal car crash might slam you with 30 or 40 Gs of force. Falling from terminal velocity? Hundreds of Gs in milliseconds. That's enough to turn organs into pudding. Not carrot pudding, the bad kind. So by all logic, surviving a fall from 10 kilometers should be impossible, which is why the fact that it's happened is so mind-melting. And I mean that literally. If you asked me to bet my fluffy ears on it, I'd say no chance. But then again, humans are weirdly durable meat sacks, and sometimes physics decides to take the day off. So next, let's meet someone who broke every law of probability and gravity by crashing into Earth from over 10 kilometers and living to tell the tale. All right, time for our first skydiver without a parachute legend. Meet Vesna Vulović, a 22-year-old flight attendant from Yugoslavia. In 1972, she boarded Jet Flight 367, a regular passenger plane cruising at over 10 kilometers in altitude. Seems like just another work shift, right? Coffee, peanuts, safety demos, nothing out of the ordinary. Except, mid-flight, the plane exploded. Investigators later concluded it was likely caused by a bomb. The aircraft tore apart in the sky, scattering passengers and debris like a horrific confetti cannon. Everyone on board was doomed, or so it seemed. Vesna wasn't wearing a parachute. She wasn't even braced for impact. She was trapped inside a section of the fuselage as it plummeted from 10,160 meters. That's basically Mount Everest plus some extra altitude, straight down towards solid Earth. So why didn't she become a tragic statistic? A cocktail of physics, luck, and maybe divine trolling. First, the fuselage acted like a giant metal shield. Instead of free-falling solo, she was surrounded by wreckage that absorbed some of the kinetic energy. Think of it like falling inside a half-crushed soda can. It still hurts, but the can takes part of the beating. Second, the plane fragment landed on a snowy, forested mountainside. Snow is nature's crash pad. It compressed under impact, slowing her down just enough. The trees also help dissipate the force, kind of like a car's airbags but made of pine. Third, her body was wedged by a food cart. Normally, being stuck next to a beverage trolley is the worst part of a flight. In Vesna's case, it kept her pinned and reduced the thrashing around that usually tears people apart in freefall wrecks. Did she walk away whistling? Nope. She suffered a fractured skull, broken legs, and slipped into a coma for days. But she woke up. Not only that, she lived for decades afterward, became a national hero, and even ended up in the Guinness World Records as the person who survived the highest fall without a parachute. Just imagine, a 10-kilometer free fall, no parachute, no safety gear, and she still made it. If this were a video game, I'd call hacks. In real life, it's the insane combination of environment, wreckage, and pure dumb luck. And here's the kicker. Vesna said she didn't even remember the fall. She just woke up in the hospital with people staring at her like she was a miracle. Honestly, if I fell that far, I'd probably delete the memory too. So yeah, survival from 10 kilometers? It's not supposed to happen. Yet, Vesna Vulović proved it can. But she wasn't the last, because just recently, in 2025, another passenger found himself the lone survivor of a devastating plane crash in India, and his story might be even more haunting. Fast forward to June 12, 2025. India. A normal morning at Ahmedabad Airport. Passengers boarded Air India flight AI-171, expecting a routine trip. Among them was Vishwashkumar Ramesh, a British Indian man in his early 40s. Seat 11A, near the left emergency exit. Totally ordinary seat choice, until it wasn't. 30 seconds after takeoff, the plane started to lose altitude. Imagine buckling your seatbelt, glancing out the window, and then BAM! The engines cough, alarm scream, and the aircraft tilts downwards. No time for safety demonstrations. No chance for anyone to even grab an oxygen mask. Just raw panic compressed into half a minute. The plane struck the hostel building of BJ Medical College. The impact shredded the fuselage, flames engulfed the wreck, and within moments, the cabin turned into chaos. Every soul on board perished, except one, Ramesh. How? Seriously, how do you go from being in a fireball of twisted aluminum to limping out alive? First, let's talk seat position. 11A, right next to an emergency exit. Experts always say rows near exits can sometimes provide structural reinforcement. In this case, the fuselage broke in a way that left just enough survivable pocket space where Ramesh sat. Everyone else? Crushed or trapped. He had that 1 in a million slice of geometry. Second, the impact zone. The plane hit a hostel, not open concrete. Buildings can partially collapse and absorb some of the force, unlike a flat runway or field. Think of it as crashing onto a mattress, made of bricks. It's still bad, but slightly less instantly fatal. Third, and maybe most brutal, is luck. Physics doesn't negotiate. Out of more than 100 people, the equations chose him. Wrong place for everyone else, right place for Ramesh. He didn't walk away smiling. He suffered serious injuries to his chest, eyes, and legs. Witnesses said he was covered in blood, dazed, pulled from the rescuers who probably couldn't believe their eyes. But survival isn't just physical. The psychological scars cut even deeper. In interviews, relatives said he hardly speaks about the crash. He wakes from nightmares, feels crushing survivor's guilt, and struggles to sleep. He lost family members. His brother Ajay was among the dead. Imagine living with the knowledge that you're the only one who got out. That kind of loneliness weighs heavier than gravity. So why include Ramesh's story in a video about falling from 10 kilometers? Technically, the plane wasn't cruising at cruising altitude yet. It was still climbing. But the principle is the same. When you're trapped in a steel tube that suddenly plummets, survival odds approach zero. And yet, he lived. Ramesh isn't a Guinness World Record holder. He's not celebrated with medals like Vesna. He's just a man carrying a trauma that will never fully heal. His survival is proof that physics can be bent by circumstance, but also a sobering reminder that survival isn't always a happy ending. Sometimes it's just the beginning of a lifelong struggle. And here's where our fluffy brains explode. Between Vesna in 1972 and Ramesh in 2025, we see the razor-thin line between total annihilation and miraculous survival. Same laws of physics, same impossible odds. Different outcomes thanks to a seat number, a building's angle, a pocket of snow, or just plain dumb luck. And if you think these cases are just random miracles, think again. There's actual science that explains why a handful of people have cheated terminal velocity. And spoiler, it's not just because they landed on life's metaphorical pile of marshmallows. So, let's pause for a second. What do Vesna in 1972 and Ramesh in 2025 have in common? Both should be dead. Like scientifically, mathematically, turned into bunny pancakes dead. And yet, they're not. Which means we've got to dig into the cocktail of science and dumb luck that occasionally lets humans survive the unsurvivable. First ingredient, seat position. Air safety experts will tell you not all seats are created equal. The middle of the plane near the wings is structurally the strongest. But in Vesna's case, being pinned in the rear fuselage gave her a protective shell. For Ramesh, being right next to the exit row created a survivable pocket when the metal tore. Basically, you want to be in the airplane's version of a crash cage. So if you're picking seats, yeah, legroom matters, but maybe also think, will this spot give me a 0.01% chance of not being obliterated? Second, impact surface. This one is wild. Falling onto concrete, instant expiration. But if you land on something that absorbs shock, like snow, trees, or even a collapsing building, you might stand a chance. It's the same principle behind crumple zones in cars. Spread out the impact and you reduce the lethal G-forces. Vesna snow and forest combo? Perfect nature-made airbag. Ramesh's unlucky hostel? Weirdly, also an airbag, though a very tragic one. Third, body position. Skydivers know this trick. Spread out to maximize drag. Then tuck into a roll at the last second to spread the impact. In theory, if you go limp like a drunk ragdoll, your body might distribute forces better. It's counterintuitive, but stiffness kills. So maybe the trick is be floppy like a plush toy thrown off a roof. My specialty. Fourth, the physics of fragments. Being inside wreckage isn't always bad. Parts of planes or debris can slow descent, increase drag, or shield from direct impact. Think of Vesna's fuselage fragment as her accidental parachute. Humans alone fall like bricks. Humans plus twisted metal sometimes fall like crumpled paper. Still deadly, but less terminal. Fifth, dumb cosmic luck. Let's be real. You could do everything right. Pick the safest seat, relax like a noodle, aim for a snowbank, and still not make it. Meanwhile, some guy named Ramesh just happens to be an 11A when physics decides to glitch. Survival from extreme falls is a statistical freak show. Out of thousands of crashes, a handful of people walk away. And here's the dark side. Survival isn't always victory. Vesna lived, but with lifelong injuries. Ramesh lived, but with crushing trauma. Survival Survival means your heart beats, but your mind and body carry scars forever. So yeah, the science explains the how, but it doesn't make it any less miraculous. It's like rolling a 20-sided dice where 19 sides say you're toast and one side says, congratulations, you get to wake up in a hospital bed with a story no one believes. And yet, stories like these keep us fascinated, because deep down, humans love the idea of beating impossible odds. Falling from the sky is one of our oldest fears, and the fact that anyone, anywhere, has lived through it feels like proof that maybe, just maybe, the universe likes plot twists. So the next time you hear turbulence and clutch your armrest, remember this. Physics is terrifying, but once in a while, it lets someone walk away from a 10-kilometer plunge. And that's both horrifying and, in a weird way, kind of comforting. Now, let's wrap this up with the biggest lesson of all, because survival isn't just about falling. It's about what you do after you hit the ground. So what do we actually learn from all this, besides the fact that gravity is rude and airplanes are not trampolines? The first lesson is obvious. Human bodies are tougher than we think. We're bags of bones, water, and bad decisions, but under just the right conditions, snow, fuselage, weird seat geometry, we can survive things that should be instant game over. The second lesson, luck runs the show. You can read every survival guide, practice skydiving techniques, and still, if physics doesn't feel generous, you're toast. Vesna and Ramesh didn't survive because they were superheroes. They survived because 1 in a billion circumstances lined up in their favor. The third lesson is deeper. Survival isn't the end of the story. Vesna lived with permanent injuries. Ramesh carries trauma so heavy he barely speaks about the crash. Living through the fall is just the beginning of another battle, the mental and physical recovery. Sometimes surviving means spending years learning how to really live again. And finally, there's the philosophical punchline. Life is fragile, but also insanely resilient. Out of all the chaotic molecules flying around this planet, somehow a person can fall 10 kilometers, smash into Earth, and still open their eyes afterward. That's terrifying, but it's also beautiful. So yeah, maybe don't test gravity by leaping out of planes without parachutes, but take comfort in knowing that humans, for all our squishiness, occasionally pull off miracles. And me? I'm just a dumb rabbit with oversized glasses, but even I can see it. These stories aren't just about falling. They're about the will to stand up again after the world quite literally knocks you down. So, what did we learn today? Falling from 10 kilometers up is basically nature's delete button. Physics says you're toast, statistics agree, and gravity never takes a vacation. But sometimes, just sometimes, humans find themselves on the winning side of impossible odds. From Vesna in 1972, pinned in a broken fuselage on a snowy mountain, to Ramesh in 2025, trapped in seat 11A when an entire plane came down around him, these are living reminders that miracles can sneak through even the harshest equations. But don't get it twisted. Survival isn't guaranteed, and it isn't pretty. It's bones breaking, minds scarred, lives forever changed. The true miracle isn't just that they lived, it's that they kept going. And me, I'm just a dumb rabbit with oversized glasses. But even I know one thing for sure. You don't win against gravity, you negotiate with it, and hope the universe gives you a soft landing. If you enjoyed this wild dive into the science and stories of survival, hit that like button, subscribe, and hop along with me for the next unbelievable adventure. Because trust me, the sky's not the limit. It's just the beginning.